흡혈귀란 거 생각보다 귀엽네요. 구부릴 수 있어요?
이거 구부려서 뭐예요?
여기서 뛰어내릴 수 있어요? 준비됐어요.
Hi, I'm Nat, he's Matt, and we got your geek news right here.
Really geeky news. This has been a blockbuster 80s cartoon and kids book riddled summer, but now we're taking a look at one of the wildest vampire films I have ever seen, Thirst.
Or Pakji, the Korean word for bat. It's a foreign film from Korean director Chan-wook Park, or Park Chan-wook, who brought us Old Boy and Lady Vengeance.
And I've got to say, for every diamond-skinned 18-year-old angsty sex bomb vampire movie, there should be one of these made.
Oh my gosh, it is such an atypical vampire story. It was so unromanticized.
When you think of Lestat and you think of Brad Pitt being all sexy with Tom Cruise,
there's something very romantic and sexual about these vampires. Even
in Twilight, you know,
Twilight,
you look at this.
True Blood, vampires are these sexy, romantic kind of creatures, but not what you see in this movie at all.
No.
It was very real.
And you know, without getting into spoilers, there's a very cool plot to this one.
Exactly. Basically, it's a blood transfusion gone wrong that turns a priest into a vampire. Kind of ironic there.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ethical and moral stuff that obviously sits there.
Definitely.
And it makes for such a real character. There's this guy who all of a sudden realizes he's got to rely on the blood of others. And the cool thing about this character is that he spends a lot of time working in hospitals. So he has very interesting ways of getting blood.
Yeah, very easy access to blood, which is kind of funny. And, you know, this is not an action-packed romp, but it's very graphic.
Yeah, and when we say graphic, we mean graphic violence and sex.
Oh my gosh, this is one of those things where, as a Korean growing up, I'd watch these films and I always considered them to be pretty conservative, but their movies, as of the last 10 years, are just so graphic and so unconservative, and the sex is just uncomfortable. It's just too real. Like everything
all
with
of
this
it's
movie
so
is too
uncomfortable.
real.
Well, I mean, you look at Old Boy and that scene with the hammer where he's just laying into everyone with such graphic violence. In this one, in Thirst, there's these shears that make this appearance over and over and over again. And the neat way that they make a mark in someone's neck looks exactly like vampire fangs. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff in this that you would see that there's a built-in mythology. There's a vocabulary that Pak is able to use here, and he doesn't have to explain any of it because you know what a vampire is.
And the characters in the movie just happen to know these things that they're able to do because they're vampires, which is refreshing. Again, very realistic. If Matt turned into a vampire, we'd have this knowledge of what vampires would be able to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this character is in this movie as well.
It's not like in a zombie film where they try not to use the word zombie. Yeah, in this, the guy kind of realizes what he is rather quickly, and it's interesting to see his transformation from being a saint at the beginning, virtually canonized as a saint, to being this darker, mysterious, and of course the woman that falls in love with him. Man,
twisted.
The whole
so twisted.
The whole Pattinson-Kristen thing has nothing on how messed up and realistic this human vampire
It's a very human vampire story.
Is.
Well, the realism in this movie makes all the sex and violence just even more visceral than you would normally expect.
Yes. There were times where I saw Nat covering her face and ears, which is a move she saves for like Mike Myers killing rampages. It was insane.
well, the sex was just uncomfortable. It was just so real that it felt so uncomfortable, especially with all those people in there with me. I mean, there was no romantic music, no romantic build-up.
And you know, that's
no
a director. That's a director who knows what he's doing. And
there's nothing sexy about it. Ugh, I think that was the problem.
Well, and he also writes everything, which is the amazing thing. I mean, he writes all his own films, and I've got to say some of the most clever dialogue I've seen all year was in this movie, and I didn't even get to hear it in my native tongue. I had to read it, but especially around the mahjong table, it was such a great plot device.
And you know what? Aside from the writing being quite good, the acting was really top-notch too, and the scenes, especially around the mahjong table, really showed it.
And you can expect the familiar vampire sort of vocabulary to pop up in this one without all the fanfare. That's the cool thing. There's no exposition because you only really learn what you need to learn in order to enjoy a phenomenal story.
Exactly. So if you can dig up a screening of Thirst in your town, do it, and do it fast. You know, it just came out in North America, and the theatrical experience on this one is, albeit a little uncomfortable at times, but really worth it.
And if you're a vampire fan, this is totally required reading. You owe it to yourself to catch this, at least on DVD, because if you miss the theatrical run, it's a shame, but you've got to see it.
So if you've seen it, tell us what you think on yourgeeknews.com.
Time of death, 3:31 p.m.
뱀파이어는 어떻게 해서 되는 거예요?
우리 둘 다 지옥 가요. 사람 살리는 일을 하고 싶어요. 이렇게 자꾸 보내기만 하자니 괴로워 죽겠습니다. 아무도 저를 위해 기도하지 못하게 하시고